Hello YouTube, I'm Joey Russo, disabled competitive pistol shooter, and today I'm going to discuss my process for developing a stage plan for IDPA or ASI. The old 7 P's adage is a good way to conceptualize the philosophy behind creating a stage plan. It reads, proper planning and preparation prevents piss-poor performance. Definitely is still the case. Now, the logical question is, why even bother developing a stage plan? I mean, lots of folks don't or half-ass it, true, but it's been my experience those that don't have a plan are at best inconsistent in their performance. The answer why we need to do so is, by having a formal, structured process to build your stage plan will allow you to do so more efficiently, thoroughly, and be able to replicate it over and over, which in turn will lead to a higher level of consistent performance. Said another way, consistent prep equals consistent performance. Looking to the graphic on the right, you'll see I have 5 phases or steps in developing a stage plan. First is pre-screening, followed by on-site, next briefing, then walkthrough, and ultimately finalization. We'll now explore each of these in greater detail. So pre-screening. For major events, usually the matchbook is available to download ahead of time. I like to print these out to write on, and so I have a hard copy I can reference on the range. For local club level matches, if you get to the range early, you often can see the written stage descriptions before the match begins. Either way, first thing we want to do is conduct a pre-screening of each stage's written stage description, or WSD, paying special attention to any stages having the following. Limited scoring. For those who may not know, limited scoring limits the number of shots to fire in a string to only what is specified in the stage description. This type of scoring is commonly used for standard stages. Now, matches may not be won on limited scored or standard stages, but they sure can be lost on them, trust me. Which is the reason why during screening, we note all stages with limited scoring. Unusual number of scored hits. By unusual, I'm talking about anything other than 2 hits anywhere on the target. For example, best 3, best 1, best 2 to the head, and so forth. Targets with different scored hits. In IDPA, it is possible for one target in a string to require a different number of shots than other targets. ASI has no such restrictions, so there can be multiple targets requiring different hits. Presence of disappearing moving targets. Stages with disappearing moving targets are important to identify ahead of time because they may alter target priority and or due to activator placement may limit available paths to take through a course of fire. Reloading devices placed off body. We want to identify these stages ahead of time as they can pose some interesting questions, like how many reloads? Can you leave what you don't need? Will you need to retrieve the devices and stow back on person? If so, where will you put them? Back in mag pouches, in a pocket in your waistline? Will you need to reload out of an item like a bucket, off a barrel or table, and so on? Downloaded, unloaded starts. How will a downloaded start affect future reloads during a course of fire? It's a question to ask. With an unloaded start, is slide closed or can it be locked open? Table starts, guns in briefcase, barbecue, backpack, etc. When compared to drawing from a holster, these are unorthodox, requiring conscious thought to complete safely. Single-handed shooting, retention shooting. Will you need to transfer the pistol between hands? Have you practiced lately shooting from retention, one-handed or two-handed? Mandatory reload not required. In ASI, there's usually a mandatory reload required between the first and last shot. If there isn't, we want to make sure not to go old brain and lose time performing an unneeded reload. Mandatory non-shooting action. So ASI is like old rules IDPA. There can be mandatory non-shooting actions which must be performed on the clock. Failure to do them can earn you a penalty. And any other weird stuff. Like, as I'm talking now, I just remembered once starting with hands submerged in a tub of water. Something I definitely want to capture in the pre-screening. In the end, what we are really trying to do with pre-screening is reduce any surprises which could catch us unprepared. Remember the 7 Ps. On the right is an example of a stage description, which during pre-screening, I noted the following, highlighting and underlining in red. It's a downloaded start, only 6 rounds. Unusual scored hits and targets with different scored hits. 3 to the body, 1 to the head on targets 1 through 3, then 3 hits anywhere on target 4, and then steel must fall. PPDS. As a permanently physically disabled shooter, or PPDS, I thought I should touch briefly on additional items needing attention when pre-screening, both for fellow PPDS and as things to think about for non-PPDS folks who design stages or are tasked with running matches where PPDS might participate. Range bay berm height versus target height. Having only recently returned to competing since becoming disabled, there's been quite a learning curve for everyone at my local clubs. Me, range staff, match directors, stage designers, so on and so forth. One of the biggest considerations has to be range bay berm height versus target height. Since I'm in a wheelchair, all stages are seated stages for me. My lower position relative to most targets means I tend to have an upward trajectory with my shots. Depending on berm height, target height, shooter height relationship, this might have my rounds impacting dangerously high up on the berm. Always concerned for safety, I definitely pay close attention to this. For example, at one of the first IDPA matches I shot from my wheelchair, the stage designer intended for headshots on a target, but I determined shooting the head might have my rounds impacting too high on the berm. So I had to try and thread the needle between non-threats and try to get a hit lower on the body of the intended headshot target. Nearly impossible, and as a result, of course, I nicked a non-threat. Door and hallway width. My Grit Freedom chair is 32 inches wide, so narrower doors and hallways can pose a problem for me to get through. Port window height. I'm seated, so depending on how high a port or window is, I may not be able to shoot through it. Prone, kneeling shooting positions and low cover. These are usually impossible for me seated in a wheelchair. So when I see them during my pre-screen, I make note to ask about what IDPA calls a position of ability. That's an alternate shooting position. Target activators, like stomp boxes, can be problematic. The design of my Grit Freedom chair features a boom with a third wheel out the front, which I can pop off the ground on demand, basically pop a wheelie. Depending on situation, I might be able to activate a stomp box by popping a wheelie and using my front wheel to activate. Vehicle props like cars, bikes, boats, canoes, and so forth. These are conditions where PPDS is probably going to need an alternate position. Elevated platforms, for example, wobbly bridges, another non-starter requiring an alternate position of ability. Ground targets requiring shooting over vision barriers or hard cover, like barrels, to see and hit. Again, every stage is a seated stage for PPDS in a wheelchair. In the case of barrels, an easy fix is spreading them slightly apart to create spaces between to allow shooting. This is not an exclusive list, but you get the idea. My local clubs have really upped their game since I've returned. Usually the MDs forward me the stage descriptions ahead of time so I can pre-screen and let them know of any concerns. Also, on the day of the match, I usually vet the stages as part of SO Walkthru or while they are being built. My recommendation is for PPDS to contact the match director well in advance of any event they are planning on attending, letting them know about limitations and discussing possible alternatives. Consider providing video or images so the MD can get a better idea as to your abilities. On-site reconnoiter. Once you have pre-screen, you definitely want to get to the match the day before or early enough to see the stages as they are laid out on the ground, or optimally, seeing others shoot. Be cognizant of stage boundaries, though, keeping far enough back so you don't get in any trouble. During the on-site, I'm observing and taking notes. If the matchbook was provided, I usually just write on the stage description I printed out for later reference. Things I want to note include target locations and positions engaged from. Does it appear some targets are available from more than one location? Timing of moving target activation and exposure times. Use the stopwatch to get an accurate time of target exposure after activation, and in the case of disappearing targets, how long they are available. Is there opportunity to engage other targets while moving target is still activating? This can be a huge time saver. Paths competitors are taking through course of fire. Is everyone taking the same path, or are there options? Reload locations. Where do you see reloads occurring, and what type of reloads are being done? Reactive with empty chamber or proactive with loaded chamber? As a side note, in IDPA, we can now drop an empty magazine with one round still in the chamber, and this has become a popular alternative to reloading with retention or tack loading. Prop use. Will presence of a prop impact stage planning? Are there different ways to use the prop? And any other information you deem important. Important note, the on-site can be used to start building a tentative stage plan. However, avoid finalizing and committing to any stage plan until you are actually able to complete your walkthrough. To the right, you see a stage description of the infamous death stage from a Colorado match that I printed out and made lots of notes on as part of my on-site. There was a desk with drawers, which when each was pulled, activated different moving targets. Reloads were stored in a drawer, and you had to download a start too. This remains probably the most complex stage I've ever encountered. Our next phase in this stage planning process is the briefing. And this meme is right on point. I always chuckle. Through the years, I've competed and worked in a lot of matches, and I'm surprised at how many people are lackadaisical when it comes to the briefing. So after the on-site, it's time to occupy the stage with your squad and be briefed by the SO or RO. Pay attention. There's a lot of information to be gleaned during the stage briefing, such as where all the targets are located and for what positions are they available, levels of priority, round count, restrictions, or special instructions. This info is being provided to you off the clock and can hasten your stage planning when you only have a couple of minutes to complete your walkthrough. Kind of a tip for IDPA, I have asked questions of SOs before, only to have them respond with rereading aloud the stage description again, or saying something like, well, what does the rulebook say? So, if after the briefing you have a question, I recommend leveraging the stage description and framing your question something like this. So, I assume since the written stage description does not mention insert topic, then I can do this and not incur PE? I've had a good luck with getting actual answers to my questions this way. Walkthrough. Once the briefing is finished, you'll then be given a couple of minutes to complete the walkthrough phase of the process. Locate all targets. Priority 1. You can't shoot them if you don't know where they are. Hopefully you paid attention during the briefing, so you should have a very good idea of their location and be able to confirm stage round count too. Identify which targets are available from each position. A technique I have found useful is going downrange to targets and then looking back uprange toward positions to discover more options. For IDPA, we want to confirm target priority from its respective position. In IDPA, we have vertical cover, where priority runs from the outside edge to inward, sometimes referred to as slicing the pie. Then there's horizontal cover, either shooting over or under, where priority runs near to far. And then we have targets in the open, which also runs from near to far. Target priority, though, can be altered based on presence of movers and dispersing targets. Again, target priority is something covered during the briefing. The image to the right is a good example of how fluid target priority can be. In this case, from the start position, you can immediately see 3 targets circled in red, 2 on the left and 1 down on the right. If you elected to shoot them from the SP in the open, the start position, then target priority was near to far. That is, outside left target, then the target in middle, and finally the right target further away. However, you also have the option of advancing from the SP to a position of cover as shown by this red arrow from here to here. When you get there, you would engage only the first two targets outside to inside. These guys here, this one and this one. Picking up the rightmost target back here from a different position later in the course of fire. Continuing, plan your route through the stage with the goal of minimizing movement and shooting more targets from each position. Avoid crowding cover. Make use of distant cover to blend positions and engage multiple targets. Better to move once and transition between targets twice or more versus moving twice or more. Blending positions with distant cover can be a powerful technique to save time, but you have to be careful. The image to right illustrates correct distant cover use. I'm going to turn on my laser here real quick. There we go. We'll say the shooter started centered up front on this wall between the fault lines. In order to engage the three targets from that position, he would have to use both ends of the wall, that is shoot from the right and left fault lines. However, if he backs out of position like he's done here, using distant cover, he can engage now all three targets from this one position. What he has to ensure, though, is that he is not exposed to any unengaged targets. In this case, the wall at the next position is blocking his exposure to the two unengaged targets on the right. So he's good to go. If he had backed up too far, let's say he backed up over in this area beyond the right wall, then he would be exposed and incur a PE. Pay attention to foot placement relative to fault lines. Try to find visual reference points to key in on when entering a position. Things like fault line stakes, seams between fault lines, and so forth. Turn this off. And continuing. During a walkthrough, find what I refer to as Twofers. These are opportunities to efficiently multitask, such as drawing, reloading, and/or shooting while moving. Plan to exploit moving target sequencing. For example, in this video I'll show you, I engaged the left static target during the lull after shooting the drop turner steel popper target activator located in the center. Then I shoot the disappearing drop turner on the right. Let me turn this down. There we go. Activator, static, drop turner. Just like that. A very important part of our walkthrough is programming the shooting solution for each stage. Remember from my previous trigger manipulation video, the formula, shooter capabilities, that's the 3 T's, plus the shot metrics, using the acronym TDAR, equals shooting solutions. For shooter capabilities, we use the mnemonic of the 3 T's, training, talent, and technology, where quality and quantity of training gives us talent, which we define as a reliable, on-demand performance lever. Technology employed, such as whether using iron sights or red dot, can also contribute to your talent level. Next, to conceptualize shot metrics, we use the acronym TDAR, whereby T is time, D is distance, A is accuracy, and R is risk. Again, in the trigger manipulation video, we learned there are 2 possible shooting solutions at our disposal. First is the default subconscious accelerated execution of the shooting motor program using open loop motor control, where speed is the priority. The accelerated trigger press, ATP, is used. Recall in ATP, we don't care about the wall, we simply stroke the trigger rapidly, accelerating past the wall, firing the pistol, and resetting quickly under recoil. Visually, we are target focused, with iron sights perceived peripherally in the foreground, Red dot, we're always target focused anyway. Targets we engage using open loop are referred to as accelerated targets. Next is the consciously controlled execution of the shooting motor program using closed loop motor control, where accuracy is the priority. The controlled trigger press, CTP, is used. Remember, in CTP, we work from the wall of the trigger for all shots. Getting efficiently to the wall, then gradually increasing pressure from the wall to the point the gun fires, and then rapidly resetting the trigger under recoil, moving efficiently back to the wall to repeat the process if needed. Visually, we have to reference our iron sights to obtain needed alignment, then place the sights on a specific point of the target. Using a red dot, you remain target focused, which again that's a huge advantage in visual processing speed. Targets engaged with closed loop are referred to as controlled targets. In the video, I will demonstrate using the formula to find the proper shooting solutions. Turn this down again. This is an unlimited best 3 scored empty chamber and downloaded start with only 4 rounds. Let me turn on my laser. Now let's say I'm conducting my walkthrough and I need to determine my shooting solutions for each target. Starting with this target here on the right, just below the laser there, I need to, using TDAR, first is T for time. Is there a time element? Well, I'm on a shot timer for the whole stage, true, but there's not an individual time component to this target. Next is D for distance. It is about 11 yards within both of my accelerated and controlled effective range. Up next is A for accuracy. The accuracy demands of this target are higher due to the non-threat, this guy over here, obscuring about the left third of the target. Last is R for risk. Due to the non-threat position, there's a degree of risk associated with this target. So based on the higher accuracy demands and associated risks, this target is definitely a controlled target. Moving left now to this center target, I repeat the process. Is there a time element? Yes, there is. Behind this target is a steel popper, which when hit will activate the disappearing drop turner over here. I'll need to quickly get my 3 hits so I can transition to the drop turner. So speed will be a requirement. Distance is about 10 yards, again, within both of my accelerated controlled effective range based on my 3 Ts. Accuracy needed for this target is minimal. I do need to hit the target along the center line to hit the steel behind it, but I have all of the 8-inch down zero zone available. I consider this a low risk target, again, just needing to hit center line to knock the popper down to activate the drop turner. Based on the speed demands, distance, lesser accuracy requirements, and low risk, this is an accelerated target. Similar to the previous target, the most important metric for the drop turner here on the left is time. I need to quickly get 3 hits within 2 fast exposures of the disappearing target. With speed being the priority, then this is also an accelerated target. Okay, let's see how my walkthrough shooting solution worked. Each shot from the wall, accelerating and accelerating. Plan finalization. So once a walkthrough is finished, we enter the final phase, plan finalization. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Hey, did I mention you need to rehearse? Using a combination of verbalization, visualization, and kinesthetic techniques to imprint your plan in depth. First or third point of view as you simulate, visualize, executing your plan. eyes closed, ear pro off to help mitigate distractions. This is not the time to be socializing. You need to be focused on the task at hand. With more complex stages, consider chunking your plan into easier to remember and rehearse pieces. Always rehearse success. Avoid thoughts like, I'm going to try. We do not try to match, we only do. If there's a try in your plan, you need to revise it. Watching others shoot stage can corrupt your file. Avoid doing so. You should be rehearsing up to the last minute. Stick to plan you develop. Avoid last minute changes. Remember, a mediocre plan well executed beats the best plan poorly executed. I'll say early on, I was guilty of changing my plan last minute after watching others shoot. 2 things I shouldn't have been doing, and most of the time, it was to my detriment. Conclusion. So when the dust settles and you're finished shooting your stage, here are some things to consider. Whether a good or bad stage, when done, always focus on positive. For example, I did a great reload and prepare for the next stage. Here again, early on in my competitive career, I was terrible for focusing on only the negative. Even when I had a great run, I always found something I could have done better. I had an unhealthy zero defects mentality. As I became more experienced, though, I improved my mental game through education and training, and lo and behold, I became a much better competitor. Document. For example, via video, taking notes, using the journal app on iPhone. You want to document what went well and opportunities for improvement. Notice I'm not calling it what went wrong. Again, keep it positive. We will use this record to then guide our future training needs. However, do not review video until after the match. As we talked about above, you need to prepare for the next stage, like reviewing your pre-screen on-site notes, not be reliving the past looking at a video. Don't be discouraged when you have a bad run. Over the course of a major match, most competitors will. Remember, matches are one round at a time, one stage at a time. Consistency for the win. Performance goal is shooting most consistent match within your capabilities, talking about the 3 T's again. Finally, realize like any skill, this stage plan process must be regularly practiced to be implemented efficiently. Use the process at club matches. Don't treat these local events any different from major matches. They are training opportunities. A special note about coming up with shooting solutions for targets. This part of the stage plan process can be practiced anytime you're shooting. Learn to conceptualize every target as either an accelerated target or controlled target using the 3 T's plus TDAR formula. Once you do, it becomes second nature, requiring little thought to complete. That's a wrap. If you have any questions, post them in the comments section below. And hey, if you're digging my videos, then do me a solid and hit the like, subscribe buttons, and bell if you want to be notified when I upload material. Until next time, take care, and remember, where there's a will, there's a way. Don't let anything keep you from pursuing your passion.